might be quite interesting because climate change can be such a sort of serious topic, and it is a serious topic, but to tell you the bizarre and surreal way that Westminster is tackling it, before we get on to the serious stuff. We have a climate change bill going through Parliament at the moment, and last night at 11 o'clock we finished the consideration in committee of that bill. And I just thought I'd tell you a bit about what it tries to do and what it fails to do and so on, and how we're doing it. And the first thing is that think about the biggest things that affect CO2 emissions: transport, responsibility of the Ministry of Transport; energy generation, responsibility of the Department for Business, Enterprise and Regulatory Reform; houses, responsible of the Department of Communities and Local Government; green taxation, responsibility of the Treasury. Virtually nothing to do with environmental emissions is the responsibility of the Department of the Environment, except farting cows. Okay? That's all they do, essentially. And just to give you a flavour of that, not a flavour of that, but I also did the energy bill. We brought together, whereas government separates these things, we do energy environment embodied in one person, as it were. We've done an energy bill which had nothing at all in the entire bill about saving energy, because it's not the job of the Energy Ministry to save energy. That's the Environment Department's job. So you see the problem here. You give Hilary Benn and his successors the responsibility for saving the planet, and everyone says Hilary who, and all the big decisions that affect the future of the planet in terms of emissions are taken by other people. So the House of Lords said the buck should stop at the top. And the government said, well, you know, if you start with this, where will it all end? But, you know, it's not an unreasonable proposition that saving the planet might be responsible of the top guy, because somebody's going to have to bang some heads together. The next thing is, all these targets about cutting our CO2 emissions, you might assume that Britain had to cut our CO2 emissions. But we don't. Britain could do nothing to cut its CO2 emissions at all and still hit our climate change bill targets by just buying, you know, wind farms from Poland or whatever, dams from wherever. No obligation at all to do any of it ourselves. And then, finally, is the target. Because on the title of the bill, it says a bill to set a target. That's how it starts. A bill to set a target for UK, well not UK emissions, UK carbon account by 2050, cut in emissions by, and the bill says 60%. Now, 60% comes from the Royal Commission on Environmental Pollution, a report published in the year 2000 based on science from the 1990s. And at the time, it was felt that 60% was the right British contribution to a global cut in emissions by 2050 that kept us below 2 degrees C. But the science has moved on since they published their report, and now pretty much everyone thinks that the answer to the question that gave you 60 is now probably 80. It's now, all right, you know, you could say 2050 goals is just nonsense, you know, we'll all be dead by then, or government ministers will be long gone. But the point of the bill is you have a 2050 goal and a 2020 goal and a whole series of carbon budgets to get from here to there, and it just, you know, it just means you're aiming high, essentially, you know, and that's the point. That you're aiming there rather than aiming there, and we think that's pretty important. So the serious point behind all of this, it seems to me, is that first of all, politically, the concept that you vote blue and get green doesn't convince me entirely, and this will, I think, be the acid test for them. The fact that the Environment Department is a small department having its budget cut because the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, the Food and Rural Affairs bit is eating up money because of problems with farmers and single farm payments and all that kind of stuff, means that they're actually cutting back on business support for recycling and this kind of stuff to make the FRA bit of the FRA add up. So you've got a small underfunded department cutting on certain environmental programmes, and within the whole scheme of government a very weak department. And in a sense, our big story is to say that as a party, the reason why it would be different were we running it or in a big position of influence is that we have that green thread, green backbone through everything we do, through our transport policy, through our energy policy, through our housing policy, through our tax policy, which would mean that the whole of government would be working together to achieve these goals, not one, you know, not, oh, this is the environment bit and the rest of it abandoned. So, am I an optimist? Well, spending time in the House of Parliament doesn't make you one, but spending a day in Cambridge probably has done. So thank you for that.